I believe 2 minutes. Right.
I think that's the goal. Hopefully, functioning what they do specifically. Once we transfer that to the substrate. I don't know. I know that with the fingering, from my understanding, tension and conjoins the different phases, but also you have your electric dipole. And I don't know how that would relate. I know.
You guys are close to. I heard you needed a minute or two, and you're close to starting the talk.
I am. I'm joining the Zoom now. Is that right?
Yeah. Demos, you just joined. Did you want to make a quick announcement since we have 30 seconds to before the talk starts?
No problem. Just getting ready for the next thing that I have to do. So that's all.
Got it. Awesome.
We went there.
That should do it. Can people hear me over Zoom?
Yep, thank you.
All right, give me 1 minute to share my screen. Sorry for the delay on the setup on my part. I'm just seeing myself and then a giant version of myself behind me right now, which is very weird. All right, can you see the presentation?
Yep, you're good.
All right, good morning. Thank you all for coming out. My name is Nico Adams. I'm a graduate student with the Minnesota Institute for Astrophysics. What I wanted to talk about is a little bit different than I think a lot of the other talks today. This is entirely an outreach focused talk. So basically the idea is that almost every single one of us here has gotten pretty far into science at this point. Many of us will continue working in the academic world for a pretty long time. Very lucky few of us might go on to be professors ourselves of some branch of science. And involved in all of that is a really under-discussed part of the sort of discipline of science, which is astronomical, or in general, scientific outreach. For me, that is astronomical outreach, and I'll focus more on what you can do with astronomy and with telescopes. But I think what I'm about to talk about applies a lot more broadly than that. So the title of the talk is Means Two Things. Please try this at home was what we said to a lot of people during the COVID era when we were doing a lot of outreach talks online and we were trying to get people engaged in ways that we hadn't had to before. The other meaning of this is you guys can try this. These are all tips that every one of us, if you're working in outreach at some point in your lives, can actually implement yourselves. These are pretty easy programs to sort of start and get going with. So I'm going to talk about two major programs that we have run from the University of Minnesota. The first is called Universe in the Park. So I've been coordinating Universe in the Park for the last 3 years, but in general, this is a 20-year-old program now. The idea of this program is every summer, graduate students from the Minnesota Institute of Astrophysics will take portable telescopes out to state and local parks all over the state of Minnesota. We'll set up a projector screen and give a short space talk, basically describing some topic that we're interested in about space. And then we will actually allow people to look in telescopes. So we'll maybe target the moon, Jupiter, Saturn, binary stars. If we're very lucky, sometimes we get a sighting of Andromeda if we have a very skilled telescope operator. And basically just allow people to see the cosmos for themselves. So this is a hands-on way of engaging people in space. It does a lot more than just sort of giving a talk and then having conversations afterward. We actually have this like hands-on activity that you can do yourself. So the spread of this program is a lot wider than our campus. And this is one of the major benefits of doing outreach this way. during the academic year, we mostly have people come to Tate Hall, the physics building at the University of Minnesota. And we give them a tour of our facilities, like we have a historic telescope on campus, but it's not quite the same as going all around the state. This engages a lot more people, ranging from, as you can see here, as far north as about the St. Cloud and as far south as about Faribault. It's a huge map. We even have some that are on the border with Wisconsin. So the impact of this is pretty significant. The response from parks, since we can't generally reach out to the people who show up, we don't take attendance, so we don't get a lot of specific reviews from our attendees. But the response from parks has been really positive, where the people who work with us generally give us sort of rave reviews. We've been invited back many years for this. And I think by the numbers as well, this is a really significant program. Astronomy at the U of M is a pretty small program. So for us, this is an outsized impact that we're having, where the entire program of astrophysics is only about 20 graduate students versus an average attendance, an average audience for one of these events of maybe 16 in a summer is over 30 people. We've had one that actually filled an entire room with over 100 people and then spilled out into the hallway where there was just, it was beyond standing room only, there was no room to stand. So people get really excited about these. So as many of you know, everything changed when the Fire Nation attacked in 2020. We could no longer do things in person. And the problem with that is the basic building block of our outreach events was in-person outreach. That it was supposed to be these sort of face-to-face interactions and hands-on interactions with telescopes and with the scientists who were operating them. So what we ended up having to do was pivot to something that we called Universe at Home. And what this was we did the same thing that we would normally do to begin. We gave sort of a space talk about a topic that interested us, and then we would open the YouTube live comment section to people to ask us questions and to sort of basically express any sort of burning question that they had about space in general or about the topic we were talking about. And we would finally wrap up with an activity of some sort that people could try at home. So I'll walk through some of those. One person walked people through how to use sort of the NOAA website for how to track solar activity over time. Another person actually walked through how to create a salt dome model of the solar system at home. This was back when schools and summer programs were closed, so people really stuck at home trying to do these activities on their own. Another person walked through what would happen if Earth had 200 moons in Universe Sandbox. And one of my favorite activities is that's me holding an egg. We did the NASA egg drop experiment, which is where you build out of cardboard and balloons, something very akin to the Spirit and Opportunity lander for the Mars rovers. So you just sort of wrap balloons around a cardboard casing and you drop an egg with a parachute in this balloon casing from a few stories up. Our egg survived. Spoilers for the end of that video. So what we found is this was more successful than we expected. We thought it would be a lot more limiting than in-person outreach, but we found that the live comment section on YouTube is actually a great way to have a Q&A and have an interactive element to these talks. We did 14 live events in 2020, and each one had about twice as many people attend just live. So these are not people who watch the video after the fact, but just the peak number of people who tuned in at any one time. And we almost reached 1,000 people that year, just in terms of people tuning in to these events to watch us on the night itself, so that they could ask us questions, and if they wanted to, take part in the activity. Some of the comments that we got, we found that it's actually easier to get questions that people might be a little bit uncomfortable with, or questions that are a little bit off topic or a little bit more interesting, because as I'm sure you all are sitting in an audience right now, there's sort of a depressive effect to asking questions when you have the eyes of a crowd on you. And our favorite comment of the summer, I think, was, how can you become a space meteorologist? I'm 7. Which just made our summer. So the big takeaway from all of this is, if you are planning outreach, it's really good to look beyond your campus. With Universe in the Park, we've mostly partnered with state and local parks around Minnesota, but you can do a lot more than that. You can partner with schools, churches, community centers, and even public events. Until 2020, we actually did a yearly thing where we set up a booth at the Minnesota State Fair. So that's one of the pictures up there. And the other thing that you can do is, if you cannot go out into the world, live virtual events are actually a really easy and accessible way to involve a broader community. What we heard is that while people did generally prefer in-person events, in the surveys that we sent out after we started doing these, a lot of people who could not otherwise get involved, like at least one person who had a 130-mile round trip to make it to the University of Minnesota, and another who was an alumni in Louisiana. These people could not come to our in-person events. So we're reaching a broader audience of people who just otherwise would not be able to get involved. So if you're interested in this, come talk to me if you see me around for more info. And my email is at the bottom of the page. Thanks for your time.
Is that a model of Lucy?
I grabbed this very late last night. I think it is, but I'm not sure.
I think that is Lucy.
Remind me what Lucy is?
It's the one for the L4, L5 Trojans around Jupiter.
Yeah, I think that's right.
Okay.
Are you going to be back to doing Universe in the Park this summer?
We are. So we opened in a limited way last year. Because this is a short talk, I didn't get to sort of mention the details of that, but we opened in a COVID safe way where we moved everything fully outdoors. So we bought all this new equipment and we had a limited schedule, and now we're back to the full sort of complement of about 16 events.
How do you advertise these online events? How did you reach so many people?
That's a really good question. Universities are really good at this. So what we sort of found in 2020 is that there was nothing to advertise for a very long time. So this whole sort of infrastructure of the University of Minnesota meant to send out newsletters and send out announcements of events was sort of sitting idle. So when we started doing this, it felt like we woke the beast, that like all these like mechanical parts that were just sitting there sprang into motion. So particularly if you're working for a university, it's a really good idea to contact the people who manage public outreach professionally for other university events. That's pretty much what we did every single time. We sent out a reminder email and a registration link before every event. So we sort of held people accountable to saying, you have signed up for this. We're going to remind you to come, and you are now part of this event. It's not just something you're tuning into passively. And then we use the university's infrastructure.
How is the schedule presented to the public? Is it on the Minnesota State camping website, or is it through the University of Minnesota? How do people, the general populace, know about these astronomy things in the parks?
It's both. So I think because we partner with so many parks under different designations, like we do local parks and we do state parks, it's up to each individual park to advertise these events for themselves. And they're usually very good at that. On top of that, the U of M has a website dedicated to this. So our Universe in the Park website lays out the entire schedule for the summer and where to find all of these parks.
Have you guys tried timing like lunar events at all for things?
Timing what?
Like there are certain lunar events, and do you guys know?
Yeah, so anytime there's something like interesting in the sky, we try to have a special event. Those usually happen on campus. So we haven't gone like off campus to organize any of those. But those are also a really good way to sort of bring in the broader community because there's more excitement about them. So I think the biggest one that we've ever had was the solar eclipse in 2017. We had, don't quote me on this because it definitely was not okay. We had over 100 people on the roof of Tate Hall, sort of overflowing into parts of the roof where they were not supposed to be. There are photos of that are very worrying, but it looked really exciting.
We will not quote anybody that there were 100 people on the roof of Tate Hall, but I'd like to stop the questions because it's time to go to the exhibit. If you have, I think all the speakers are there in person. If you have follow-up questions for any of the speakers, you might be able to grab them on your way to the exhibit, or a couple of them are actually also have an exhibit. So that would be a good place to follow up. Thank you, everybody.
There are little promo videos for the exhibits, but and for the sake of time, I'm not going to show them. Let's just go down to the Balance Atrium and check out the exhibits.